made you get into politics?
You know, my dad was in politics, not as a politician, but he worked behind the scenes for former Premier Bill Davis in Ontario. He was a guy that raised money locally for Bill Davis, and I just got involved. I remember when I was 14 years old, I went to my first nomination meeting. I was a young progressive conservative. I took out a membership to vote for one of my dad's friends who was trying to actually replace Bill Davis because he was retiring. We needed a new MPP. And I remember getting to this fantastic event with balloons and signs and all the energy. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do this someday.
Now that you're in politics, did you like it? Was it worth doing?
I've had my ups and downs in politics. I wasn't a super happy member of parliament in my first go around. From 2011 to 2015, I felt that I had more to offer and wasn't able to sort of do that. But I can tell you now, I love it. We have such a great leader who really wants input from all of his members of caucus. And it really gives you a sense of purpose. Very excited about the future for our country with Pierre Poilievre.
Where are you from?
I was born and raised in Brampton, Ontario. It was a tiny town when I grew up, about 35,000 people. Brampton's now about 800,000 or 900,000 people. I don't live there anymore. I live in a small town called Orangeville, which is in my riding of Dufferin-Caledon.
Tell me a little what's unique about where you live now.
It's just such a fantastic small town. You're about 45 to 50 minutes from Toronto, so you have access to all kinds of things. We have a beautiful downtown in Orangeville, lots of great restaurants and shops. People know each other. That small town feel that is so lost in so many places. The rolling hills of Dufferin-Caledon are beautiful. We've got so many farms, water. It's a beautiful part of the country. And if you haven't been there, you should come out and I'll give you a tour around.
What are 5 things you do for fun with your family? Tell me about your family.
I have 2 children, Aiden and Maya. My son's 21, my daughter's 18. I have a wife that I just married a little over a month and a half ago. We actually have an amazing blended family. My wife loves my children very much, and we spend a lot of time together. We love going to the cottage together. We have a lot of memories there, and getting out there and taking my kids fishing or boating or just those games that you play at the cottage at night. We still do it from when they were 5 years old now to in their 20s. We love movie night. I love to go back and watch the movies that we watched as kids. And we cook together. Those are also really fun nights. If we can have a cook dinner together, watch a movie together night, doesn't happen that often, but that's probably my favorite night of the week.
What brings you joy? I guess you kind of just answered that, but what else brings you joy?
I was a competitive athlete when I was younger. I run and I road cycle. Out with some of my friends. I've had the same friends for about 25 years. We get out and do a 50, 60, 70K ride together and have a beer and catch up. I love that. Quiet mornings on the lake. When I get up at 6, have my cup of coffee down on the dock, get it on a paddle board, go out into the lake, get that sort of peace and quiet. Those are some of my really favorite things.
Being in politics, it's exciting, it's challenging, but do you crave connection to just kind of find yourself again before you get back in the fray?
Yeah, absolutely. The time to disconnect is really, really important. I'm heading to Ottawa this weekend to spend some time with my new wife. And one of the things we love to do is literally just shut the door and do nothing. Saturday is going to be that day. We're going to watch some TV, we're going to cook some meals, and we're just going to hang out. That also doesn't happen that often, but I love it when you get the chance.
Why do you think it's important that the carbon tax needs to go?
It really affects every aspect of people's lives. I don't think people really realize it. We see it when we get the bill, when we look at what the price of gasoline is, but it's sort of the insidious cost that people don't really necessarily think through. And you give the example of the farmer, right? The farmer pays the carbon tax. So the farmer's paying a carbon tax for a lot of things on the farm, the on-farm products. Then the truck that comes and picks up the produce from the farm is paying a carbon tax on the fuel, right? Then that truck goes to a processor, because most things get processed from the farm. The processor's paying a carbon tax. Then a truck picks it up from the processor, and that truck's paying a carbon tax. Take it to a grocery store, and the grocery store is paying carbon tax to heat and often to cool, right? So when you put all that together, you end up with a massive inflationary cost for food. And this is one of just one small example. The other thing with the carbon tax is it's causing a huge drain in our economy. makes our exports more expensive. You're trying to export food or machinery or anything around the world, everyone's paying a carbon tax with countries that aren't. Our number one trading partner is the United States. 75% of our exports go to the United States. There's no carbon tax there. So our farmers are competing against American farmers who don't pay a carbon tax. Our machine producers are, competing against the United States that have a carbon tax. Our steel producers compete against American steel, and their steel doesn't have a carbon tax. So all of it is making our economy smaller, and it's making life more expensive, and it's gonna go.
How do you think we can connect the different views? How do we connect so we appreciate each other more and understand each other?
We have to stop punishing people that have no alternative than to use things that emit carbon. So if you live in downtown Toronto and you take the subway and you use bullfrog power, which is a renewable, you're not paying any carbon taxes realistically, directly. You're indirectly paying them on other things. And you get a rebate check and you think this is a fantastic system. But if you live in Alberta, or if you live in my riding where you heat your home with either propane or natural gas or heating oil, you get absolutely punished. You have no alternatives. You drive your car to and from work, usually long distances, and there is almost no charging infrastructure in my riding. So an electric vehicle just isn't an option. We have to find ways to stop dividing Canadians like this and punishing certain Canadians who have no choice and rewarding others. Look, I personally think the carbon tax is very insidiously designed. It's designed to help people that voted for Justin Trudeau in large downtown urban centers. And it's designed to punish people in other areas that didn't vote for him. And that's another reason why it's so terrible.
Why are we forcing people to make these sudden, unproven changes?
The targets are impossible, and the Liberals know they're impossible. When we get to these actual mandates, how the mandates are going to work, they are going to require dealerships to be selling 50% EVs. If you're in my riding of Dufferin-Caledon, and you go to your GM dealer and you say, well, I need a pickup truck for my farm, right? They say, well, sorry, there's only a zero-emission vehicle for your farm. That person's either gonna have to buy expensive charging infrastructure because there's no charging infrastructure in my riding. And in the next 5 years, it's just not gonna happen. We've heard from the government on how far behind they are on putting this charging infrastructure in, on how far behind we are on generating the electricity that's going to be necessary to power these things. None of it's possible, and you're actually just going to hurt people economically and other ways.
What will the Conservatives do to improve Canada's reputation around the world, which has taken a bit of a tumble under Trudeau and everything he's done?
We've taken a massive beating reputationally around the world for a whole bunch of reasons, and you just have to look at the things that we're actually being excluded from, right? So we were excluded from AUKUS, which is Australia, UK, the United States. It's got defense and other things in there. We're excluded from it. We're not invited to join. We're not in the quadrilateral security dialogue because we're not a reliable partner. Every country was criticizing Canada at the latest NATO summit because they have so badly underfunded our military. And we have a massive recruitment problem with our military now because of how badly the government has treated our armed forces. So it's going to take a lot of work to get all of this back to where it needs to be, but we understand that, and we know that we're going to have to do the hard work to rebuild the reputation along security, along military, along being a reliable security partner to our partners around the world.
I would make the argument that Germany and Japan are slightly more technologically advanced than us in some ways. And maybe when it comes to the argument about renewables, they've experimented with renewables a lot. And both those countries came here and said, we want your natural gas. These aren't working. These windmills don't produce enough power. Why do we say no?
Germany's experiment with renewables was a disaster because it's not sunny all the time, it's not windy all the time, and they ended up completely reliant on Russian gas, and we know where that's led to. Trudeau will say there's no economic argument to export gas. It's just absolutely false. I mean, the economics are there if you don't create a system of approvals for pipelines and other things that are so complex, so convoluted, so impossible to navigate. Businesses assess risk, right? And if a business is going to invest 10, 15, $20 billion into a project, they have to have some certainty on the outcome. The Liberals have made the system in Canada that no one's willing to invest. That's why they're saying there's no business case, because the regulatory complexity the Liberals have brought in for any natural resource project is so awful, no one's willing to take the risk. It's actually bigger than that, though. Everyone talks about energy transitions, right? Oh, Canada needs to do an energy transition. Actually, sure. Energy transitions will come when the technology's there. It's happened. We went from burning wood to burning coal, from burning coal to gas, gas to nuclear. Energy transitions do happen, and they happen naturally, and there probably will be others down the road. But a real energy transition right now is to get countries like China and many other countries in the Indo-Pacific off coal.
Yeah.
That actually would make a transformational difference in global greenhouse gas emissions. But we're not able to do it under Trudeau because he's made it so impossible for us to export LNG. If we could get Canadian LNG to China, India, all kinds of other countries in the Indo-Pacific, we would actually make a real difference in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But Canadian emissions would go up to do that, but it would make the world better. The current government wants to clean up Canada's greenhouse gas emissions balance sheet, but all it does is make the world worse because other countries emit more. It's really terrible what they're doing. They're trying to say, look, we did something good, but it actually makes the world a worse place. When we don't mine critical minerals in Canada because they won't approve them, the world doesn't run out of the need for them. They just go and get mined somewhere else at higher greenhouse gas emissions, lower environmental standards, worse human rights standards, worse employment standards. So we actually make the world worse when we don't approve Canadian projects.
We have the third largest proven oil reserves in the world. I'd argue we have the largest. We got uranium, we got all this amazing stuff to the north, but we never really wanted to build it up till we are that powerhouse country that we should be. Because I don't know if we have like imposter syndrome or what, but I'm surprised we haven't done more.
It just wasn't enough time to get the regulatory system where it needed to be under Prime Minister Harper. Unfortunately, we just didn't get that. We can do it, right? The United States has approved and built 10 LNG terminals in the last 10 years. It's possible to do it, and we can do it too. And the benefit is we lower global greenhouse gas emissions. We create great jobs for Canadians. There's more revenue for government to pay for things like healthcare, etc. So it's a win-win, and it's just Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault's ideological obsession against these kinds of development projects.
Why is it important to produce Canadian energy?
Whether it's Canadian critical minerals, whether it's Canadian energy, we can actually contribute to making the world a better place, because we do these projects at the lowest greenhouse gas intensity per liter or per ton if it's mining. We do it with incredible environmental standards. We pay good wages to Canadians. And all of it will actually make the world a better place, because the need for all of these things, whether it's LNG, whether it's critical minerals, it doesn't go away.
Why should we work to help Canada's middle class?
The middle class is everything. When you think about who sponsors a hockey team in your neighborhood, it's usually a small business. Small business is owned by a middle class family. And when the middle class is under the enormous pressure it is now, there's a ripple effect everywhere. You see it. You talk to service clubs. Service clubs are saying the average age of our service club is 60 years old because people with young families are just trying to stay afloat. They don't have time to go and volunteer their time at the Kiwanis or other things. In fact, a lot of sports now are saying we don't have any coaches because, again, the middle class is struggling under inflation, the carbon tax, high interest rates, all of the things caused by the current government. They don't have time for volunteerism. And the ripple effects into our communities are enormous. So the middle class is the key to a healthy and prosperous Canada. My daughter's going to university this fall in Ottawa. It's about $25,000 a year. Now, when I went to university, it was a long time ago, it wasn't anywhere near that cost. University is getting outrageously expensive, but homes are outrageously expensive, groceries are outrageously expensive. All of these things have happened as a result of the current government. They made terrible decisions. They've grown the size of the federal bureaucracy by 43%. 43% more people working for the federal government. What's better? I say this to people all the time. I say, look around our community. What's better after all of these people have been hired in the government? Now, then they also, on outside contractors, they went from the government spending about $9 or $10 billion a year to $21 billion. while they massively expanded the government bureaucracy. So we have to get government spending under control, which is going to bring down inflation. We're going to axe the carbon tax. That's going to bring down inflation. That's going to then bring down interest rates. We're going to build homes. We've got a great plan on that. These things are going to make real differences in people's lives. It's going to get the promise of Canada back, the promise that we grew up in, the promise we want our children to have.
What does it mean to be a good conservative?
I think a good conservative is a conservative that believes that a government should live within its means. It doesn't mean, though, that you want to cut things to the bone. You want to make sure that things that should be invested in get invested in, have some fiscal responsibility, and take care of your neighbors, take care of your community, protect the environment. These are all things that make you a good conservative.
Thank you.
Thanks.